The air hangs thick with the sickeningly sweet smell of cheap cake and forced festivity. Pink and blue balloons bob aggressively against the ceiling, their cheerful bouncing a mockery of the lead weight settling in my gut. Laughter echoes, sharp and brittle, around the rented hall. My sister, Sarah, stands at the front, her hand resting protectively on her swollen belly, a smug, expectant smile painted across her face. She's radiant, they say. Glowing. All I see is the cruel gleam in her eyes, the same look she's had since she first announced her pregnancy, just weeks after my third failed IVF cycle. It feels like years ago now, a lifetime defined by needles, charts, and the sterile scent of hope turning to ash. I take a slow, measured breath, the scent of synthetic frosting burning my nostrils. My hands clench, hidden in the pockets of my dress. This dress feels wrong. Too bright, too normal for the storm raging inside me. Every smile I've offered tonight has been a performance. Every polite nod a tiny betrayal of the raw, exposed nerve I've become. Everyone is watching Sarah, waiting for the big reveal. But right now, in this suffocating room, under the weight of all these eyes, I feel like the one being revealed, stripped bare of my defenses, my deepest failure on display. I want to run, to scream, to disappear into the manufactured joy of this party. But I stand rooted, a statue carved from pain and a fragile, dangerous new kind of strength. My chest is tight, a physical manifestation of the years of silent tears, whispered prayers that went unanswered, and the gnawing emptiness that had become my constant companion. The music, a chirpy pop song, grates on my nerves, each note a tiny hammer blow against my skull. I focus on the details of the room, anything to distract from the churning in my stomach, the way the streamers catch the light, the nervous energy of the crowd, the way my husband, David, stands a little too far away, his own discomfort a palpable aura around him. He hates these events, hates seeing me hurt, but he knows, just as I do, that sometimes you have to walk through the fire. This feels like walking through fire, naked. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, it helps me more than you know. Life before the constant ache felt simpler, fuller. There was a quiet rhythm to it, a gentle forward motion. David and I had our small house, our routines, our plans. And central to all of it, unspoken yet deeply understood, was the future filled with the sound of small feet, sticky fingers, lullabies sung in the dark. We talked about names, about how we'd decorate a nursery, about balancing work and family. It wasn't a desperate longing yet, just a natural, expected next step. A beautiful chapter we were both eager to begin. We saw our friends having kids, our cousins, our colleagues. It felt like the world was moving forward, building families, and we were right there with it, ready to join the parade. We had love, we had stability, we had hope. It felt like everything we needed was in place. We were on solid ground, looking out at a horizon painted with possibility. The world felt warm and welcoming. Our relationship felt strong, a partnership built on shared dreams and quiet affection. We supported each other, lifted each other up. The future felt like an open road, stretching out ahead of us, bright and inviting. We were building something, brick by brick, a life that felt sturdy and full of promise. Evenings were spent curled up on the couch, talking about our day, about our dreams, about the little details that made up our life together. Weekends were for exploring, for visiting family, for planning. There was a sense of peace, a quiet confidence in our path. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. We weren't famous, but we had our community, our friends, our family, and the unspoken understanding that soon, our own little family would begin to grow. We envisioned camping trips with little ones, teaching them to ride bikes, watching them navigate the world with wide, curious eyes. These weren't just fantasies. They felt like inevitable realities, the natural progression of a life well-lived and well-loved. The house felt full of a quiet anticipation, like it was holding its breath, waiting for the laughter and chaos that children bring. We'd look at baby clothes in shops, point out cute strollers, imagine our future selves juggling groceries and diaper bags. It was a shared dream, woven into the fabric of our everyday lives. My relationship with Sarah back then was typical sister stuff. Competitive sometimes, annoying often, but with an underlying layer of affection. We had our history, our inside jokes, our shared childhood memories. We fought over clothes, borrowed money, gave each other questionable dating advice. She was my older sister, the one who'd gone first in everything: first kiss, first car, first serious relationship. I expected her to get married first, to have kids first. It felt like the natural order of things. And I was okay with that. I was happy for her milestones, genuinely thrilled when she found someone she loved. Our paths felt parallel, just slightly offset. We'd always be sisters, always connected. There was a comfort in that, a sense of permanence. The idea of our children growing up together, being cousins, felt like a given, another thread weaving our families closer. Our parents doted on both of us, eager for grandchildren. The expectation was a gentle hum in the background of family gatherings, a hopeful question in their eyes. We were ready to fulfill that expectation, to bring new life and joy into our family tree. We bought a slightly bigger car, thinking ahead. We talked about saving for college, decades away. The future felt concrete, mapped out with love and certainty. There was no room for doubt, no shadow of the struggles to come. It was a time of innocent planning, of unquestioning faith in the ease of creation, in the simple mechanics of life. We thought you wanted something, you tried for it, and it happened. A simple equation, beautifully predictable. We had no idea how brutally wrong we were. The first hint that our story wouldn't follow that simple equation came subtly. Months turned into a year, then more. Friends who started trying after us began announcing pregnancies. Their bellies swelled while mine remained stubbornly flat. The questions started, gentle at first, then edged with concern. "Any news? Are you guys waiting?" The casual remarks, meant kindly, felt like tiny needles pricking my skin. The easy confidence began to fray. Worry started to creep in, a cold whisper in the back of my mind. We started tracking cycles, charting temperatures, timing everything with a clinical precision that felt deeply unromantic. The intimacy of trying to conceive was replaced by a scheduled performance, dictated by ovulation sticks and apps. The joy drained out of it, leaving behind a chore, a test we kept failing. We saw doctors. More tests. Blood draws, scans, uncomfortable procedures. The vocabulary of our lives changed: ovulation induction, hormone levels, follicle counts. My body, which I had always trusted, felt like a traitor, a machine that wasn't working as it should. The hope became a fragile thing, easily crushed by a negative test. Each one felt like a punch to the gut, a confirmation of my inadequacy. We started talking about fertility treatments, the next step, the more invasive, more expensive path. It felt daunting, a descent into a medicalized world I never expected to inhabit. Sarah announced her first pregnancy during this time. She called, breathless with excitement. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, clutching the phone, trying to sound happy for her, my own voice thick with unshed tears. It was a complicated pain, genuine joy for her mixed with a deep, aching sorrow for myself. It highlighted what I didn't have, what felt increasingly impossible to attain. She sent me ultrasound pictures, told me about morning sickness, complained about swollen ankles. Every detail, innocent to her, felt like a deliberate twist of the knife. I started avoiding her calls, flinching when my phone rang. I couldn't bear the relentless optimism, the easy progress she was making through a journey that felt like an insurmountable mountain range to me. Family gatherings became excruciating. My parents, thrilled about Sarah's news, would talk nonstop about the baby. The unspoken question hung in the air whenever they looked at me. I started making excuses to miss events, pleading migraines, work deadlines, anything to avoid the well-meaning pity in their eyes, the awkward silences that fell whenever the topic of children came up and I was in the room. The world felt divided into two groups, those who could conceive easily and those who couldn't. I was firmly in the latter, watching the former from behind a glass wall of pain. The isolation was profound. Even David, my rock, couldn't fully understand the depth of the despair, the way it consumed me, the way it made me question everything about myself. Was I less of a woman? Was this punishment? The irrational thoughts spiraled, fueled by hormone treatments and sleep deprivation. The first round of Clomid, the hope it brought, the crushing disappointment when it failed. The next, the same cycle repeated. It was a loop of anticipation and grief, a slow, agonizing erosion of spirit. My body became a battleground, poked, prodded, pumped full of drugs, all in the relentless pursuit of a single, elusive goal. The financial strain added another layer of stress. Treatments were expensive, rarely fully covered by insurance. We dipped into savings, delayed home repairs, cut back on everything else. Every dollar spent felt like a gamble, a desperate bet against impossible odds. The weight of it all was crushing, heavier than I ever imagined possible. My vibrant life felt like it was shrinking, overshadowed by this one central struggle. The turning point wasn't a sudden epiphany, but a slow, grinding realization that I couldn't continue down the same path, repeating the same failures. We'd tried multiple medicated cycles, IUI, all ending in the same desolate result. My body felt weary, my spirit bruised. David was exhausted too, the strain showing in the lines etched around his eyes. We were losing ourselves in the process. One evening, after another negative test stared back at me, cold and unforgiving, I just broke. I sat on the bathroom floor, the linoleum cold against my cheek, and wept. Not the silent, stoic tears I'd perfected, but gut-wrenching sobs that shook my entire body. It was the sound of surrender, the sound of hitting rock bottom. David found me there, held me close, and we sat in silence for a long time. When the storm passed, leaving me hollowed out but strangely calm, I looked at him and said, "I can't do this anymore." Not like this. The definition of this was the endless cycle of hope and despair, the feeling of being a passenger in my own body, subjected to medical procedures that felt increasingly dehumanizing. We needed a change, a different approach, a different kind of hope. We started researching IVF. It felt monumental, the big leagues, the expensive, complicated, emotionally grueling last resort. But it also felt like a path with a higher chance of success, a path that offered a glimmer of real possibility after so much darkness. The decision wasn't made lightly. It involved countless hours of research, consultations with different clinics, agonizing discussions about the financial implications, the emotional toll, the potential outcomes. It was a terrifying leap of faith, jumping off a cliff into the unknown, hoping there was water below. But there was also a fierce flicker of defiance that ignited within me. A refusal to be defeated. A quiet rage against the injustice of it all. I wouldn't let infertility define me. I wouldn't let it steal my joy, my future. I would fight. And if I was going to fight, I was going to fight with everything I had. There was also the growing awareness of Sarah's journey, running parallel to mine, but so effortlessly easy. Her constant updates, her oblivious excitement, felt like salt in the wound. It fueled a different kind of fire, a desperate need to succeed, not just for myself, but to prove something. To silence the voice in my head that whispered I wasn't enough, that my body was broken. To reclaim some sense of control in a life that felt utterly out of it. I started seeing a new doctor, one who felt more aligned with my increasingly determined mindset. He was pragmatic, honest, but also offered a sense of cautious optimism. He explained the process, the risks, the chances. It was overwhelming, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of agency. This was a plan. This was action. We started the initial tests, the mountains of paperwork, the logistical planning that IVF required. It felt like launching a military operation. There was also the delicate balance of sharing this with family. We told our parents, who offered support mixed with worry. We decided not to tell Sarah. The thought of her knowing, of her pity or, worse, her competitive gloating, was unbearable. This felt like my private battle, something I needed to protect from her influence. The journey was long and arduous, filled with more injections, more scans, more waiting. The emotional roller coaster intensified, The highs of potential success more exhilarating, the lows of disappointment more devastating. But there was a difference this time. A steeliness had entered my resolve. I wasn't just hoping, I was fighting. Every injection was a battle won. Every scan a report from the front lines. I was an active participant, not a passive victim of my own biology. The shift in mindset was subtle but profound. It wasn't just about getting pregnant anymore. It was about reclaiming my power, my self-worth, my future. It was about proving to myself, and perhaps to the world, that I was strong, that I was capable, that I deserved happiness. This new path was harder, more demanding, but it felt right. It felt like I was finally moving forward, even if the steps were small and uncertain. The IVF journey was a relentless onslaught. It demanded everything: my physical comfort, my emotional resilience, my financial stability. The injections were daily, sometimes multiple times a day, leaving bruises on my stomach and arms, a constant reminder of the medical intervention required just to give my body a chance. The hormone fluctuations played havoc with my mood, swinging me from cautious optimism to crushing despair in the span of an hour. Bloating, headaches, fatigue became my constant companions. David learned to give me the shots, his hands steady, his eyes full of quiet concern. It was a shared burden, but one that often felt heavier on my shoulders, literally and figuratively. We went through retrieval, the surgical procedure to collect eggs. The anxiety leading up to it was immense. How many eggs would they get? Would they be healthy? Then came the waiting, the agonizing days while the embryos developed in the lab. Each phone call from the embryologist felt like a moment of truth, delivering news that could send us soaring or plummeting. 3 embryos made it to blastocyst, they'd say, and for a brief moment, the world felt bright and full of possibility. Then came the transfer, the fragile hope placed back inside me. The 2-week wait that followed felt like an eternity, every twinge, every symptom scrutinized, analyzed, desperately hoped for. And then the blood test. The phone call delivering the results. The first transfer failed. The devastation was absolute, a tidal wave washing away the fragile sandcastle of hope I had painstakingly built. It felt like a personal failure, a rejection by my own body, despite all the medical intervention. The grief was profound, a silent, lonely sorrow that wrapped around me like a shroud. Sarah's pregnancy progressed, a stark contrast to my own stalled journey. Her belly grew, her due date approached. She started nesting, decorating a nursery, attending birthing classes. She'd call and talk about cribs and strollers and baby names, completely oblivious to the pain her words inflicted. Or maybe not completely oblivious. There was a subtle shift in her tone sometimes, a hint of something I couldn't quite place. Pity? Superiority? I couldn't tell, and I didn't dare ask. She sent me pictures of her ultrasound, a perfectly formed little human, kicking and healthy. I looked at it, tears blurring my vision, the image a cruel mirror reflecting my own emptiness. The second IVF cycle felt heavier, burdened by the failure of the first. The injections hurt more, the waiting felt longer, the hope was more guarded, a tiny, flickering flame I shielded with fierce protectiveness. The financial strain was immense now. We were depleting our savings rapidly. The pressure to succeed was amplified, not just by our desire for a child, but by the sheer cost, the sacrifices we had made. We talked about giving up, whispered the words late at night, wrapped in each other's arms, the possibility hanging between us like a dark cloud. But then, the fire would reignite. A fierce, stubborn refusal to let go of the dream. We decided on one more cycle, a final attempt before we would have to seriously consider other options that felt even further from the simple, natural path we had initially envisioned. This third cycle felt different. There was a quiet determination, a grim resolve. We were soldiers in a war we hadn't chosen, fighting with everything we had left. The days leading up to the transfer were filled with a nervous energy, a mixture of dread and desperate hope. We transferred 2 embryos this time, a calculated risk, a yearning for a higher chance of success. The 2-week wait was agonizing, stretched thin by anxiety. I tried to distract myself, but every moment was consumed by the possibility of failure, the possibility of success. I tracked every tiny sensation, every phantom symptom. Was that a cramp? Implantation? Or just gas? The paranoia was relentless. And then the blood test day arrived. I went to the clinic, my heart pounding, the sterile smell of the waiting room filling my lungs. The nurse called hours later. Her voice was calm, professional. Your HCG levels are high. What did high mean? Could that mean? I whispered, barely daring to form the word. It means you're pregnant, she said, a smile in her voice. The world stopped. Then, it exploded into a million tiny, shimmering pieces. Tears streamed down my face, but they were tears of relief, of shock, of overwhelming, unbelievable joy. High levels can sometimes indicate, she paused, multiples. The word hung in the air, dizzying, terrifying, miraculous. I hung up the phone, my hand shaking, and crumpled to the floor, a sob escaping my lips, this time, a sob of pure, unadulterated happiness. I was pregnant. After everything. And possibly, with more than one. The first scan confirmed it. 2 tiny sacs, 2 flickering heartbeats. Twins. The news was almost too much to bear, too much joy after so much sorrow. We kept it quiet, shared it only with our parents, who wept with us. The secret felt precious, fragile, a delicate bloom I protected fiercely. Sarah's gender reveal party invitation arrived weeks later, a thick cardstock envelope in the mail. It felt like a taunt, a final, public celebration of her effortless fertility, arriving just as I was quietly navigating the early, precarious weeks of my own miraculous, hard-won pregnancy. Attending Sarah's gender reveal party felt like walking into a trap. My invitation arrived right as the morning sickness was at its peak, a cruel irony I almost had to laugh at. Almost. The nausea was relentless, a constant reminder of the tiny lives growing inside me, a reminder that this time, it was real. But the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the emotional agony of facing Sarah, her effortless pregnancy a mirror to my struggle, her joy a stark contrast to the years of my silent pain. The invitation was pastel perfection, adorned with tiny pink and blue footprints. It felt like a formal summons to witness her victory parade. Family obligations, however, are a powerful force. My parents gently nudged, mentioning how much it would mean to Sarah. How could I say no? To refuse felt like admitting defeat, like giving her another reason to pity me, or worse, to think I was jealous. And I was jealous, a raw, ugly jealousy I hated myself for. But I also had my secret now. A secret that felt like a shield, a weapon. I knew I was pregnant. I knew it was twins. My due date was just weeks after hers. The power of that knowledge was intoxicating. It shifted the dynamic entirely. I wasn't the barren sister anymore, the object of pity. I had my own miracle, a double miracle, earned through fire and tears. The decision to go solidified. I wouldn't hide anymore. I would face the party, face Sarah, and navigate the treacherous waters of family dynamics with my secret held close. But as the date approached, a new feeling emerged, mingling with the nausea and the nervous anticipation, a sense of strategy. Sarah's previous comments, her subtle digs, her oblivious or perhaps deliberate insensitivity over the years, they all came flooding back. The times she'd complained about being tired while I was going through stimulating injections. The times she'd asked pointedly when we were going to get serious about having kids, implying our struggles were due to a lack of effort. The pitying looks, the unsolicited advice. It wasn't just about her party. It was about years of feeling less than, years of my pain being dismissed or minimized. I remembered a specific conversation just months ago when she'd said casually, "Oh, some people just aren't meant to have kids. It's just biology." The words had cut deep, a seemingly innocent observation that felt like a brutal judgment. That memory fueled a different kind of resolve. I wouldn't just attend the party. I would go with purpose. The thought of revealing my news, after whatever spectacle Sarah had planned, began to take root. Not just a quiet announcement, but something that would counteract any potential cruelty she might dish out. The timing was crucial. It had to be after her reveal, after she had center stage, after she had said whatever she was going to say. It had to be a moment when everyone was focused, when the air was charged with emotion. It had to be my moment. The plan formed slowly, taking shape in the quiet moments between waves of nausea and fatigue. It wasn't about stealing her thunder entirely. It was about ensuring that if she chose to make my pain a spectacle, I would respond with my own, undeniable truth. My midpoint shift was becoming a strategic turning point. I wasn't just enduring. I was preparing. I started wearing slightly looser clothes, strategically chosen to hide the barely there bump. I perfected a bland, neutral expression to deflect probing questions. I rehearsed quiet, polite answers about taking things one day at a time or focusing on my health inside. However, a quiet storm was brewing. I felt a surge of power I hadn't felt in years. My body, which had felt like a failure for so long, was now performing a miracle, not just one, but two. The secret felt like a superpower. The party wasn't just a family obligation anymore. It was a stage. And I was ready to walk onto it, not as the broken sister, but as something new, something stronger, something that held its own incredible, life-affirming truth. The anticipation built, a knot of nervous energy twisting in my stomach alongside the prenatal vitamins. I knew it would be hard. I knew seeing her glowing and pregnant, surrounded by doting family, would sting. But I also knew that this time, I had something she didn't know about. Something that changed everything. I wasn't going to let her define me anymore. I was going to define myself. My journey through hell had led me to this moment, armed with a secret that felt like pure gold. The party hall was buzzing with the usual family chaos. Relatives I hadn't seen in years offered air kisses and awkward hugs, their eyes scanning my frame for any sign of something. The something they'd been expecting for years. The absence was loud. Sarah, radiant in a flowy maternity dress, held court near the giant black balloon tethered to the floor, the focal point of the upcoming reveal. Her husband, beaming, stood beside her, occasionally rubbing her back. They looked like the picture of perfect, effortless parenthood to be. It was like staring at a carefully curated Instagram feed come to life. Every corner was decorated with excessive pink and blue. A table groaned under the weight of themed cupcakes, he or she, cookies, and a hideous, oversized cake. The air was thick with perfume, anticipation, and the cloying sweetness of the desserts. I navigated the crowd, offering strained smiles, deflecting questions about work, the weather, anything but the one topic everyone was thinking about. My mother, bless her heart, tried to shield me, gently steering conversations away from babies, but her efforts were clumsy and obvious, only highlighting the elephant in the room. Sarah caught my eye from across the room and beckoned me over with a dismissive wave. My stomach clenched. This was it. The pre-show. I walked towards her, each step feeling heavy, my smile fixed, my internal monologue a frantic scramble of self-preservation. As I got closer, her smile tightened, losing some of its forced warmth. "Glad you could make it," she said, her voice just loud enough for the people nearby to hear. It wasn't a warm greeting, it was a performance. She glanced pointedly at my flat stomach, then back at her own prominent bump. "Must be interesting for you. Being here." The dryness of the comment was palpable, thinly veiled by a saccharine tone. My chest tightened, but I held her gaze, refusing to flinch. "It's lovely, Sarah," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "So much." Color, a subtle jab at the overwhelming pink and blue. She didn't quite catch it, or maybe she did and chose to ignore it. "Yes, well," she said, placing a hand back on her belly, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "Some of us are just lucky, I guess. Things just happen naturally for some people." There it was. The thinly veiled cruelty, delivered with a smile. The years of pain, the countless needles, the failed transfers, the sheer cost, reduced to luck and naturally happening. It was a low blow, delivered in front of family and friends, a public declaration of her perceived superiority. My carefully constructed composure threatened to shatter. I felt the familiar heat of shame and anger rising in my cheeks. But then I remembered my secret, my 2 tiny heartbeats, my double miracle. The shield went up, stronger than ever. I forced myself to smile, a genuine smile this time, one that didn't reach my eyes. "Yes, Sarah," I said softly, my voice calm, deliberate. "Some things do happen naturally, and some things are fought for." Hard, I let the implication hang in the air for a second, watching her brow furrow slightly. Did she suspect something? No, her ego wouldn't allow it. She clearly believed I was still in the depths of my struggle, perhaps having given up entirely. That assumption was the key to the twist, the foundation of her impending blindside. She saw me as defeated, barren, irrelevant to the grand narrative of procreation she was currently starring in. She didn't see the warrior who had emerged from the ashes of despair. She didn't see the quiet confidence forged in the fires of failure. She just saw the sister who couldn't conceive, the one who had fallen behind in the great race of life. Her dismissal of my years of struggle as simply a lack of luck or natural ability was the final straw. It wasn't just insensitive, it was a deliberate erasure of my pain, my effort, my fight. It was in that moment, standing there surrounded by pastel balloons and oblivious relatives, that I knew exactly how the rest of this party was going to play out.
Her moment was coming, yes.
But mine was coming too, and it would hit her with the force of a freight train. The moment arrived. Sarah and her husband stood next to the giant black balloon, pins in hand. The crowd hushed, phones raised, eager to capture the big reveal. The anticipation was thick, almost suffocating. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. Sarah beamed, a picture of expectant joy. "Okay, everyone," she announced, her voice bright and theatrical. "We're so excited to share this with you. We've waited so long." My eyes narrowed. She'd waited so long? Try years of doctors, needles, and soul-crushing disappointment. That phrase, so casual, felt like another tiny barb. She continued, milking the moment, talking about the journey, the miracle, words that felt hollow coming from her lips. And then she paused, her eyes sweeping across the crowd, landing on me. The smile on her face morphed slightly, becoming something colder, something calculating. My gut twisted. I knew what was coming. She was going to tie this back to me, to my infertility. It wasn't enough for her to have this moment. She had to use it to highlight my lack, my failure. And especially, she said, her voice softening insincerely, especially after seeing some people struggle. We just feel so incredibly blessed that for us it was easy. She paused, letting the word hang in the air, loaded with unspoken meaning. Easy. The word felt like a slap across the face. Easy for her. A brutal, public comparison, delivered with a faux sympathetic sigh. A collective murmur went through the crowd, some people glancing at me, pity and awkwardness flickering in their eyes. My cheeks burned. The heat of humiliation was overwhelming. I wanted to sink through the floor, to disappear. But then, a different heat ignited within me. The fire of righteous anger, burning away the shame. This was it. She had drawn first blood, publicly and deliberately. She had made my deepest pain a spectacle, a prop in her own narrative of effortless success. My hand instinctively went to my stomach, a protective gesture. 2 tiny lives, growing strong against all odds. My miracle, hard-fought and won. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was about them. About protecting their story from being overshadowed by her casual cruelty. The plan, the half-formed idea I'd been nurturing, solidified into a fierce, unwavering resolve. This was the moment. Her husband handed her a pin. The crowd held its breath. "Okay," Sarah chirped, her eyes still on me, a triumphant glint in them. "Ready to find out?" They plunged the pins into the balloon.
Bang.
Pink and blue confetti exploded outwards, raining down on them in a shower of color. Cheers erupted, screams of excitement. "It's a boy," someone yelled. Pink and blue.
How
Unique. As the initial wave of noise subsided and people started converging on Sarah, congratulating her, I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the lingering excitement. It wasn't loud, but it was clear, steady, carrying a weight that silenced the surrounding chatter. All eyes turned to me, surprised. Sarah, momentarily distracted by the confetti in her hair, looked at me, a question in her eyes. Her smug smile was still in place, anticipating whatever polite, perhaps slightly tearful, congratulatory words I might offer. She expected me to play my role, the supportive, slightly sad, barren sister. She was completely unprepared for what came next. "Congratulations, Sarah," I said, my voice even, devoid of the expected emotion. A few people nodded, confused by my tone. "That's wonderful news," I paused, letting the words settle. Then I took a deep breath and let my own news fill the space. "Speaking of wonderful news, David and I also have something to announce." A ripple of surprise went through the crowd. Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of suspicion replacing the smugness. She probably thought I was going to announce we were adopting, or maybe getting a puppy. Something small, something that wouldn't dare compete with her moment. "We're expecting two," I said, my voice gaining strength, confidence. A collective gasp. More eyes on me now than on Sarah. And I continued, a genuine smile finally breaking through, a smile of victory hard-won. "We found out recently. It's not just 1 inch." I looked directly at Sarah, her face paling, her eyes widening in disbelief. "We're having twins." The words landed in the room like bombs. Silence. Absolute, stunned silence. People froze, their congratulatory words to Sarah dying on their lips. All sound seemed to drain away, leaving only the echo of my announcement hanging in the air. Sarah's face went completely blank. The color drained from it, leaving behind a sickly, ashen hue. Her eyes, fixed on mine, were wide with shock, disbelief, and something else, something like fear. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her husband, who had been beaming moments before, looked from me to her, his own smile faltering, a look of confusion washing over his face. The confetti, moments ago a symbol of joy, now seemed to mock the sudden, crushing silence. The plot twist wasn't just that I was pregnant with twins. It was that I had held this truth, patiently, silently, letting her walk herself into this public display of cruelty, believing I was still the same broken person. I had allowed her to underestimate me, to dismiss me, to use my pain for her own twisted validation. And then, at the peak of her self-congratulatory moment, I had revealed not just my success, but a success that was double hers. The look on her face was priceless, pure, unadulterated shock and utter, complete devastation that I, the barren sister, not only had a child coming, but two. Her moment, her carefully orchestrated celebration of effortless fertility, had been utterly eclipsed by my unexpected, hard-fought double miracle. She swayed on her feet, her hand going to her head, not her belly this time. The smugness vanished, replaced by a look of utter defeat. She crumpled. Slowly at first, her knees buckling, her eyes rolling back. Her husband lunged forward, catching her before she hit the ground. The giant black balloon, moments ago popped in celebration, now seemed to deflate metaphorically alongside her. Chaos erupted again, but this time it was different. Not cheers, but gasps, concerned murmurs, people rushing towards Sarah. Amidst the confusion, I stood there, my own hand still on my stomach, a strange calm washing over me. The years of pain, the public humiliation, the quiet suffering, it all culminated in this single, explosive moment. I hadn't just announced my pregnancy, I had delivered a carefully timed, perfectly executed counterpunch. Her cruelty had been met not with tears or retreat, but with an undeniable, joyous truth. The room, moments ago filled with her triumphant energy, now vibrated with the shockwave of my revelation and her subsequent collapse. It wasn't the victory I had ever imagined. It was messy, dramatic, and laced with family dysfunction. But as I stood there, watching the scene unfold, a quiet, fierce sense of vindication settled deep within my bones. I had faced the fire, and I had emerged, not unscathed, but carrying life. 2 lives. The immediate aftermath was a blur of panicked voices and frantic movement. Sarah's husband knelt beside her, shouting her name. My parents rushed over, their faces a mixture of concern for Sarah and stunned disbelief at my announcement. Other relatives crowded around, offering help, asking questions. The air, thick with celebratory confetti moments before, now felt heavy with tension and confusion. Someone called for a doctor, another for water. Sarah lay on the floor, pale and still, the pink and blue confetti scattered around her like fallen petals from a ruined bouquet. It was a dramatic collapse straight out of a movie. And for a fleeting, dark moment, I felt a surge of cold satisfaction. She had publicly mocked my pain, and her own perceived triumph had literally brought her to her knees when faced with my reality. It was a harsh, undeniable form of karma, delivered swift and public. But the feeling was fleeting, quickly replaced by a wave of nausea. Not from the pregnancy, but from the sheer intensity of the moment, the emotional whiplash. David was by my side in an instant, his arm around me, his face etched with concern. "Are you okay?" he whispered, his eyes scanning mine. I just nodded, unable to speak, my voice caught in my throat. The scene felt surreal, a grotesque tableau of family drama played out amidst balloons and cake. Paramedics arrived, their presence adding another layer of official urgency to the chaos. They checked Sarah, helped her to a chair, and determined she was okay, just overwhelmed and dehydrated. The drama of her collapse subsided into the mundane reality of a near-fainting spell, but the impact of my announcement lingered, a silent, buzzing energy in the room. Everyone looked at me differently now. The pity was gone, replaced by surprise, curiosity, even awe. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Twins. She's pregnant. I had no idea. The focus had shifted, irrevocably. Sarah, propped up in a chair, her face still pale, glared at me. The look in her eyes was pure venom, a mixture of fury and humiliation. She knew. She knew I had waited, known she would likely say something cruel, and then delivered my news at the most impactful moment possible. It wasn't just a surprise. It was a strategic move, a turning of the tables she had never seen coming. Her plan to highlight my infertility had backfired spectacularly, exposing her own pettiness and leading to her public collapse. My win wasn't just having twins. It was the timing, the context, the undeniable proof that she had miscalculated, that her cruelty had boomeranged back on her. She had walked into the trap she herself had set, her own words triggering her downfall. There was no tearful apology from her, no attempt at reconciliation. The sisterly bond, already strained, snapped under the weight of this public confrontation. She eventually left the party early, citing feeling unwell, her departure significantly less triumphant than her arrival. The party limped on, the atmosphere irrevocably altered. The initial joy was replaced by awkwardness, stunned silence mingling with hushed conversations. People came up to me, offering congratulations, their voices hushed, their eyes flicking towards where Sarah had been. It felt strange, receiving these well wishes in the aftermath of such drama. It wasn't the gentle, loving way I had ever envisioned sharing my pregnancy news. It was loud, chaotic, and born from conflict. But it was also liberating. The secret was out. The years of hiding, of pretending, of shrinking myself to manage others' discomfort, it was over. I was pregnant, with twins. And no one could take that away from me. The journey home with David was quiet, filled with a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. We didn't talk much, just held hands, processing the events of the afternoon. As we pulled into our driveway, he squeezed my hand and said, "You did it. It wasn't about the fight with Sarah. It was about the whole journey, the years of trying, the heartache, the resilience. I had fought for this, and I had won. The house felt different when we walked in. It felt fuller, brighter, anticipating the life that would soon fill its rooms. The quiet peace that had existed before the struggles, the peace we thought we had lost, was starting to return, layered with the knowledge of the battle fought and won. The scars remained, the memories of the pain and the cruelty wouldn't vanish overnight. The relationship with Sarah was irrevocably broken, perhaps beyond repair. That was the bittersweet part of the victory. Winning came at a cost. But standing in my living room, bathed in the soft evening light, my hand resting on my still flat but undeniably pregnant belly, I felt a profound sense of peace. The future wasn't just a dream anymore. It was a tangible reality. 2 tiny lives growing inside me, a testament to hope, resilience, and the fierce, unyielding power of a dream refused to die. The world outside the window looked different too, less intimidating, more full of possibility. I had faced my greatest challenge, walked through the darkest valleys, and emerged carrying not one, but 2 precious lights. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but I knew, with a certainty I hadn't felt in years, that I was ready. I was ready for the sleepless nights, the crying, the chaos. I was ready for the messy, beautiful, imperfect reality of motherhood. I had fought for this joy, and it was finally, truly mine. And no amount of pink and blue confetti, no amount of public humiliation, could ever dim the radiance of that truth. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.